actually in real life be one of the female characters in any of the Hallmark movies you've watched.
Yeah.
And date one of those men in one of those movies and be that character, who would it be? What movie?
I wonder who that would be, eh?
Well, I want to welcome you to a very special episode of Media from the Heart. My name is Ruth Hill, and I'm your host. And this is Hangout with Ruth Hill. Yes, I was in the hot seat. You will learn the answer to that question, that burning question, and many, many others. It meant so much to have so many of my friends come and support me during this time. Some of them I've met before, and some of them I haven't. Without further ado, we're going to jump right into this episode. So please enjoy. I want to make this just a time for you guys you could ask me questions, we can hang out, maybe there's things you want to talk about. Coming from someone who never dreamed I would be doing anything like this, where I would be the one out in front talking to people. I was always one who wanted to be in the background. That was always how I saw myself. And I didn't want to see myself up front. And so for years, I was doing these interviews where I would interview actors. I don't know how many of you know my story necessarily. But for many years, I was doing reviews and interviews, and I would write them up. And it usually did take several days to write these interviews up, because writing was very, very important to me, to get it exactly right, for it to sound right. And so I really thought that that's what I would continue doing. That was my whole thought. It's like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep interviewing people. And it's really interesting. I was sometimes doing 4 interviews a day, and I'm not joking on that. I was like keeping myself in this insane schedule because I had this idea of I had to do so many interviews. I had to just keep going. I could never say no. I had to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And it was very time consuming. I loved writing the interviews, and I loved getting to interview the actors, but I found that I was not always able to get them up in a timely fashion because I was so busy. It's been interesting then when the opportunity came along for me to work for Paul Green as an executive assistant, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to keep doing these interviews. And so in many ways, I took a break from it. I kept my website because I always had the thought, what am I going to do with this website? And so for over a year and a half or so, I haven't really been able to do the interviews like I had wanted to do them. And I was thinking about collaborating with others and trying to do that. And so what really spurred me on to do this podcast was 2 things. First of all, some of you probably know that Paul Green and his partner, Kate Austin, that they have a company, Freedom Alchemist, and they do Freedom Portal, which is like a health, mind, body connection thing. And it's an online education coach type thing. And so what I was doing is I've been taking these courses, and it helped me a lot, but I joined what they called their masterclass. I was all about, let me do everything for everyone else. It's not about me. It's always been about, let me serve everybody else, and I'm not worried about building anything for myself. That had been kind of my way of thinking. So as I went on in this course, it just so happens, and it's so nice to see everybody. I'm so happy to see you all here. As I was going on in the course, in this master class, Kate, who is Paul Green's partner, she said, well, Ruth, this is great that you're listing all these things that you want to do for Paul and for everybody else, but what do you want for yourself? And I'm going to be honest with all of you. I actually got upset when she asked, because she said, you need to think of doing something for yourself. I'm like, well, I'm doing plenty of things, and they do bring me joy. I was really upset. I actually got so upset, I started crying about it, as a matter of fact. I did not want to have to come up with stuff for me. I was thinking, I'm doing stuff for Paul, I'm doing stuff here, I'm doing stuff here, I'm doing stuff here. And I'm enjoying it, so why do I need to come up with anything for me? But as a result of her saying that, it started me to thinking, and I thought, okay, I'm going to collaborate with somebody and we'll get a podcast going. And so I reached out to one of my friends, and we had a meeting, and we had a couple meetings, and that was going to go ahead. And what happened was that didn't quite work out. My friend was off doing other things. She was getting to appear in Hallmark movies and go to Hallmark movie sets. And then my friend is Jax, and in fact, there's an episode where Jax and I kind of talked about, and I was mentioning when we might collaborate. And that had kind of been what I thought would happen. And so what spurred me on was, some of you might know that Paul Green has a podcast called The Grass is Greener with Paul Green. And his Christmas movie, Christmas CEO, he brought on a lot of people for his podcast. And he decided, why don't I try and bring on a virtual audience? And I thought, oh, that sounds like a really great idea. So I watched what he did with them. And I started thinking, okay, I could have a podcast where I'm interviewing people and I can bring on a virtual audience, and I can just open it up to everybody. And I wasn't even sure how I was going to do it at first. I didn't even have a Facebook group. This has all been a process, and it's all been jumping in and just trying things. And so that's how my podcast came about. I wanted to be able to interview people. And the really cool thing I love about this, I love having a virtual audience. I love that now I can bring on a wide variety of people, and we can have it's not just Hallmark, but we've got actors, and we've got writers and authors. And there's even a woman that I'm talking to right now that we're going to get a podcast up, and she's the CEO of a travel company. There's lots of different things that we're going to be doing. I'm reading a book right now called Essentialism, and I have another Facebook group where it kind of sat there for a while, and I'm bringing it back, and we're reading books, and we're going to have a book talk, and that's going to be part of my podcast. And that's going to happen at the end of February. And actually, my mom and I were just talking about it. You might not know this, but my mom teaches a Bible study class, and she's thinking about what she's going to do after her current study is done, and it's all done via Zoom. And I'm going to actually jump in and have some segments that I'm going to do, some short segments to go along with her Bible study, and release that as podcast episodes too. So I love the fact that my podcast can be super eclectic, and that it involves so many. I mean, you guys, it's so great to see so many people coming on and being a part of the audience. And so that's kind of how things have come to this point. It's just been jumping in and trying things. And every time I turn around, last Thursday, my backdrop was all over the place. I was starting to watch it back, and it kept moving. I did a better job of getting it in place. And every time I want it to build, I've got a microphone that I've got to set up and start using. There's all these different things. And every time I want to keep getting better and better and better. And you guys are a huge part of that. All of you who come, most of you have been coming to these regularly, and it's so great to see you. You've all been so supportive. I can't believe how many people have joined in with the Facebook group and how many downloads there have been of the podcast. It's just kind of like blowing my mind, because I had no idea what I was doing, and I just am jumping in and learning. So that's kind of my story. And what I wanted to be able to do is, maybe you all would like to, is there something you want to talk about? Is there something that you would like to ask me? And maybe you guys have things that you would like to see other topics, other ideas for podcasts. I would love that. I would love to hear from you all. Would anybody like to ask me anything?
I got a list. I got a list.
Oh, you have a list? Ooh, I'd love to hear your list.
Well, I want to go back to the beginning where you were talking about when you were writing. Did you work for a company, or how did you come up with just start writing?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking. Well, writing for me has been something that I've been doing since I was in the 4th grade. I had a teacher that really inspired me, and I started writing. And in fact, I have an unpublished book. I don't plan to ever publish it, because if I go back and read it now, it was written as I was a teenager when I wrote it. And it's great. It's fun to go back and look at, but it's like a 350-page book that I wrote. And I loved it, and I planned to publish it. It didn't quite work out. But writing English for me is always, I love music, and that's what I majored in college. Is I did major in music. The writing for me, it just is something I did, something I was good at, something I really enjoyed. I would take courses. Actually, when I was in college, one of my favorite stories to tell is I was in college studying music, and I asked if I could take this English course as a substitution for the regular English course that I was supposed to take. And they said, well, only English majors are taking this. You can take it if you want to, but you're going to be with other English majors, and you're not an English major. I'm like, that's okay. And I had the highest score in the class by the time it was done, because
Wow.
I absolutely love English. I love writing, and it's been something that I've been able to excel at for most of my life. I moved back here to Washington State to live with my parents, and I was unable to get those teaching jobs. And so I was a sub for many, many years. And during that time, I started to see people writing blogs, and that was like all the rage. I was following blogs, and I kept thinking to myself, could I ever do something like that? All these people are writing blogs, and they're getting to review things for companies. And I thought, well, I don't know if I want to jump in and do it. But then one day I just thought, I'm going to do it. I'm only subbing. I have all this extra time on my hands. Let me just jump in and try it, just to see if I could do it. And so I just started doing these blogs. I started a website. I had no idea what I was doing. Really, I didn't. I just kept asking and researching and jumping in and doing it and trying things. And I had quite a blog going. I was getting stuff from companies and beginning to review it. I was a mommy blogger. I was following the trend. That's what everybody was doing. They were mommy bloggers. And then I got burned out from doing all these reviews because it wasn't really what I loved. So then when I started watching Hallmark, that was actually when I started changing. I thought, okay, I've got this blog over here, and I need to inject some more interest and excitement in it. So why don't I review movies? And that was what got me into the Hallmark world, was I was reviewing movies, reviewing TV shows. And so I did that for quite a while. And then that led to me interviewing actors. And so I didn't actually work for a company. It was just me jumping in and saying, I love writing. Let's give this a chance. Let's just try it out. But that's a good question, and I'm glad you asked. So I hope, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
Good.
Do you someone else can ask a question, but do you have, because you're so busy, do you have a daily routine that you try to keep to?
That's another great question, because yes, I actually do. So a couple of years ago, I didn't. A couple of years ago, quite honestly, I would get up in the morning, have my coffee, have my breakfast, and I would sit and watch the news. If I didn't have to work that day, I would literally sit on my phone watching the news for 3 hours. And I'm not even joking. I mean, that was really bad. It sounds really bad when I listen to it now. I would exercise in the afternoons, evenings. I started doing that when my daughter was a baby, and I needed to figure out when I could exercise. I could only exercise after she went to bed because I was a single mother and it was the only way that I could make it work. Now I do have a morning routine. I began to implement that as a matter of, by going through these courses that I mentioned. That's how I started doing it. So my morning routine is typically I'm up by 6 o'clock. When I first get up, I actually do spend some time, which I know some people would not agree with this, but it's what works for me. I do spend some time quickly going through my emails, not where I get caught up in stuff. Really what I do is I go through and delete a bunch of emails because I get hundreds of emails a day. And so it gives me a chance. Most of the time I'm going through and deleting the stuff so that when I come to it later to answer questions and to respond and to do all my work stuff, I want to have those emails that aren't important. I want them gone. So for me, it works really, really well to take that time and just go through those emails and see what my day is going to look like. And then after that, I go out and I spend a half an hour on our rebounder. That's a mini trampoline. And I come back in, have my celery juice. I usually, depending on, unless something comes up that I need to set aside, I do try to do another half hour of a workout. Usually it's a YouTube video so that I'm doing strength training or something else to really challenge my body because I need that, because at this point I've been on a health journey for well, let's see, Martha is 18, so that would mean that I've been on this health journey for about 16 years. And so I have to really challenge my body to keep going. And so I'm always looking for ways to challenge it to get. And so I do lots of different kinds of workouts. And then after that, I usually take a shower, have breakfast, and then, and as I'm having breakfast is usually when I have my quiet time. Right around there, I'll be eating breakfast and I'll have my devotional time. And then after that, I start my day as far as doing the actual work, because up to that point, I haven't really done work necessarily. I've just kind of prepared things, gotten things in place. And from there, I never for sure know how my day is going to go. My day kind of got a little bit interrupted. I actually got off the schedule I just told you about, got a bit interrupted with work today, and that happens. That's part of my part of my job is as executive assistant is being available. At least I make myself available. Not that I'm forced to. My employers are not cruel about it, but I try to be available to them because I know that I have a little more open schedule often than they do, especially now that they have a little baby. And so that's basically my morning routine. And I take breaks throughout the day. I really do. I know sometimes people think that I'm always working. I really do take time where, in fact, there'll be times when I'll set my phone and iPad aside and computer, and I will just sit and watch TV with my mom. We'll watch an episode of some show that we've been wanting to watch. So I do have downtime. I usually am working, however, till I will often work till 11 o'clock and sometimes midnight, which I know sounds really bad, but I do. But actually, it works with my schedule because I've usually taken a lot of downtime in the evening, and then I get my second wind right around like 9, 10 o'clock. I'm ready to do a little more work, and depending on what I'm working on, sometimes I lose track of the time. And I've also got college in there too, because I am going part-time online doing a business marketing degree. And I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving my schooling. And so there are times where my schooling has kept me up into the wee hours of the morning, depending on my schedule. So there you go.
That's it? That's all you do?
Imagine that. But if anybody else has questions, anything, and really, it's open. I mean, if there's a question that you ask that I don't feel comfortable answering, I'll tell you, but I really can't think of anything that I wouldn't want to talk about?
Hi, I'm Veronica Robles from
That's
Houston,
it, Veronica.
Texas. It's just happy Monday. I just wanted to come on here and say hi to everybody. I totally understand. Ruth, since being a college student myself, and being, I've been a student since 2016.
Mhm.
I entered college at 30 years old. It wasn't easy. I didn't know what I was doing.
Mhm.
I did not know. And now I've been working as administrative assistant of helping students to get them college level ready since 2019. Even during this pandemic, it wasn't easy, but for me, I get a joy helping students, to get them ready, because when they go to college classes, the professors are very mean. I can tell you that I've seen firsthand. I mean, tremendously.
Mhm.
And I totally agree. I'm gonna be honest with each and everyone. I don't take a break. I work, and I have my classes. I'm taking geography. For me, because being in special ed classes, since I was in school, I didn't know this stuff. Now that I'm 36 years old, this is all brand new to me. I don't take a lot of breaks. I usually do, like you were saying, what Kate told you. I think what Kate, right? Is her name Kate?
Her name is Kate.
That
Kate,
you're doing for everybody else, but not for yourself. And I'm gonna be honest, I do that. I do that a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
I get it. I totally get it, Veronica. And I would just strongly encourage you to find something you can do for yourself, because you will burn out. I speak from experience, and you probably know that feeling. Find something you can do for yourself, whatever that might be, whether it's taking a course, for fun, whether it's going and, whether it's going to, I don't know if going to the gym is fun for you or be.
Unfortunately, I'm not able to, because, I'm also dealing with my situation. I found out during the pandemic, I have a tumor in my brain.
Oh, no.
A tumor in my brain. And unfortunately, I've been dealing with this situation. I've seen, going to 4 different doctors, not being able to figure out how to help me. Over the holidays, I found out I have some more spots on my brain, and they diagnosed me as epileptic. So, it hasn't been easy, but, I loved helping, working. But you know what? You're right. I have to do something, because I will get burned out. And I do have my moments, Miss Ruth.
Right. Well, Veronica, I think I remember you mentioning something about your health struggles. Now that you bring it up, I think I do remember that. Yeah, I acknowledge you and think it's so great that you are continuing to be positive, because I've known you on Facebook for you've been one of my supporters from way back. So I remember you, and you always send me the absolute sweetest and kindest messages. I always know when
you were so kind.
Veronica, you're always so sweet, and you have no idea how much it means to say, "Oh, Veronica just sent me a message," and I always know it's going to be sweet and kind and loving and supportive. And you're so excited. Your enthusiasm always comes through in those messages.
And you're awesome, Ruth. You're awesome. Tremendously, because I don't really have a lot of friends who love Hallmark. It's just me and my mom. We love the Hallmark channel. We try to find something inspiration, because it's really hard to find things right now, but it's not very, very good. So we try to find something to keep us going. Even with this pandemic is going on, we try to find something inspirational, like if it's saying the rosary or praying or just watching a good TV show like When Calls the Heart or old classic episodes of Reva. I'm a huge Reva McEntire fan. I love love her music very, very much. And and I totally agree. We have to, things are tough, but we have to keep going. And you're an inspiration to all of us, and even to me, Miss Ruth, because you know what, even with everything, you're going forward with your future, your dreams. You keep going no matter what, and you don't let nothing stop you. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you're just the best, and God bless you, and God bless each and every one of you. I'm so glad I'm here tonight to meet each and every one of you. You guys are awesome. And that's all I have to say.
Oh, Veronica, you're so sweet. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My goodness. And that was really what I think you put into words what I really want this podcast to be, and this particular episode especially. I want it to be something that's uplifting and positive, and just a chance for us to hang out. I want to build the community. For me,
Absolutely.
it is about building this wonderful, supportive, kind community. And it's not all about, me be, I realize it's my podcast, but I also want it to be just a community where we all feel like all of you have a part in that. That's really what I want.
Absolutely. And thank you.
I just have a quick question before you go back to Paula. Okay, so you're an excellent writer. We know that. I've seen it. And you did your blog, but how, where did you publish these interviews, or how did you just didn't call Tyler and Paul one day? Like how did that happen?
So, the interviews, the way that all came about. So I've been doing the reviews. I was like one of the top tweeters. I mean, I was like tweeting, always doing all the live tweeting with Hallmark, and you'd be amazed. I really had to establish myself with some of these actors to really show them that I'm not just here for just Cedar Cove was where I made a lot of connections. That was actually the show on Hallmark where I made a whole lot of connections, and I'm still in contact with many of the actors who were on that show. When I would do these reviews, they actually gave me I'd be able to watch it early, and I'd be able to do these reviews, and I'd tweet it all out. It took a while, but they finally started to realize, oh, you're a really good writer. And so I made those connections, and then they'd see that I was going to support them. They were on Hallmark, and then maybe they did an episode of this show over here, or this movie, and they would see that I was supportive. So what happened was, at that time, I'd become really good friends with one of the actors in the show, but he was the one who I'd always be asking things. He was a writer too, and so he'd be looking at my work, and we'd have discussions about, okay, is this good, and how should I rewrite this? And so this opportunity came up, online magazine, and I'm still good friends with the editor, and Starry Mag is actually the name of the magazine, and it's two sisters that work as like co-editors on this, and they were looking for writers. And at this point, I had never done an interview. I hadn't done anything like that, and I thought, I wonder if I could get on as a writer for them. It wasn't a paid position, but it would just be a way to showcase my work and some more writing. And I remember asking my friend, do you think I could do this? Do you think I've never done an interview. I've only been doing these reviews. Do you really think I could do this? I'd like to try it, but I'm not sure. And he's like, well, of course you can. Go right ahead and do it. And I'm like, okay. So I reached out, and they said, oh yeah, we'd love to have you come on. And I said, I think I'll just write one a month or something like that. Which that I should have known that that's not me. I'm not going to write something once a month. I'm going to do it a lot more often. And so what happened was, then I'd made a lot of these connections on Twitter, especially. And I reached out to Brennan Elliott, who many of you might know from Hallmark, but we've become very close over the years. And so I just reached out and said, Brennan, I'm going to start interviewing for this magazine. Would you be interested in doing an interview? And like within 10 minutes, he writes back, well, sure, just get in touch with. And he gave me who I need to get in touch with. And so I reached out to his manager. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa, that was 10 minutes and he's already saying yes. And so I reached out to his manager, And I thought I was going to have a good week. I thought I would have a good week to get ready for this interview. It was late. No, I had a few days to get ready. And once I found out that I was going to be talking with Brennan Elliott, and it's the first time to actually talk with an actor and all this, and I was so nervous, and I didn't know how this was going to work. I was so afraid I was going to mess up. Quite honestly, I was just thinking, I'm going to totally blow this. It's going to be terrible. All these things that I was telling myself, because I really had no confidence that I could do it. But what was really funny about that first interview is I had nothing but connection issues here. So I love telling the story. So poor Brennan is waiting for it was 30 minutes where we've been trying to connect, and I just could not connect. So I left my house. I went to our local gas station where I could get cell reception. And my first interview happened in the parking lot of the gas station. I mean, that's honestly where I had my very first interview. And but it went really well. It ended up being a good experience. And so from there,
were you pumped to do it, Ruth?
What was that?
I said, were you pumped to do it?
Yeah, you know what? I was no longer nervous. I got your joke. I was no longer nervous. Once I got in the car, it's this weird thing of I've been so nervous. I've been sitting there just like my adrenaline pumping. Once I realized I had to get in the car and drive, I no longer was nervous, because then it was like I'm doing something. And so by the time I got there, I wasn't even nervous. It was like, oh, this is easy. I mean, it's interesting how that kind of thing happens. Your focus shifts. And so from there, I just started to reach out on Twitter to a lot of these actors. Actually, there's the story of the first time I reached out to Paul, my editor beat me to it. So my editor got the interview with Paul, and I didn't get the interview with Paul. And I was so bummed about it. I remember, because I thought, I just watched him in this movie, and like Christmas Detour, and I really wanted to interview him. I really wanted to interview him, and I know he's got and Anything for Love was coming up, and I wanted to interview him, and my editor got it. I was like, and so I worked. So for a while, I was writing for this magazine. The thing was, when you have an editor, the editor has their way that they want it written. And then I had my way of writing, and lots of times they had to do so much work to edit it to the way they wanted it written. And so I talked back and forth with my editor, and I said, you know what? I love writing for you guys, but I think maybe it's time for me to go out on my own. And so we parted ways very amicably. I mean, there was no bad blood. I mean, we're still very supportive of each other. But it just seemed like the right time. And I thought, I've got this blog. Why don't I switch over and have my interviews on my blog? It makes more sense, because then I have complete control over the way that I can write them. And that's what I did. And so from there, it just really blew up once people realized that I was now writing these interviews, doing them. And so when I would contact the various actors, and I still do this to this day, I was even doing it now that I'm back to finding people to interview. I do have access to, there's something called the Internet Movie Database, and you can get a pro account. And so I do have access to that. And when you have that, you do have some access to agents and more information than if you just go to the Internet Movie Database as a quote unquote, just like it's just a free account. You don't have access to all of the emails and websites that you might when you have a pro account. So I do have that, but I also reach out on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and actually if you look through the people who have joined our Facebook group, you might find that a lot of those people are actors or they are involved in the film industry, because I've been able to develop friendships over the years with a lot of these people, and I've invited them a lot of them to join the group, and so a lot of them have. And so that is how I ended up being able to do these interviews. And it's really fascinating now. I will literally spend my time I'll say, okay, I'm going to take about 30 minutes and I'm going to look through my Twitter or my Instagram and just see who's posting things. And because I follow a lot of people that sometimes I don't even know how I started following them, but I'll just see what people are tweeting about in the film industry or authors or just in general. And sometimes someone will pop up. And so it's fascinating how it happens. But I think that nowadays, people in any industry, I mean, just because of the way marketing has changed, they realize the value of being able to come on and be interviewed by somebody who either writes well, or in this case, now I have a podcast, and they know that that's the way to get the word out. And it's up to that individual person to really do their own marketing. And so I think that's part of the reason. And then I've worked very hard to build that reputation, that people know that I'm going to be doing a good job. I'm going to be very positive. Yes, Paula, go for it.
Okay, from 2 years ago.
Yes.
What would you say is your biggest obstacle you had to overcome to achieve what you achieved?
My biggest obstacle, it was perfectionism. That is what has held me back, because throughout my life, I believed that I was a perfectionist. I lived as a perfectionist. Now, it did not always extend to everybody else. In fact, lots of times I was willing to forgive people over and over again. Sometimes I would give people so many chances that I would just kind of let them walk all over me and forgive them and let them hurt me again so many times, even though I should have known better. So when it came to other people, I didn't hold them to that standard. But with me, it was all about perfectionism, because I wanted to be perceived as being the one that had it all together. I'm doing everything correctly. I would be such a perfectionist. I'd be doing everything right. I mean, I would be working, and maybe there'd be all these projects that we're working on, and I could literally, out of 100 things that I'm doing, I could do 99 of them right. But that one thing that I did wrong, I would blow that up to be the biggest thing, and it would just negate those other 99 things I did right. That was where my focus was. Oh my goodness. And I didn't do that right. And it was usually a really tiny thing. It wasn't even usually something big. It was just a little tiny thing that just needed to be adjusted. But I thought, oh, I did that wrong and I messed up. And and that was the way I had lived my life. I could do everything I'm doing it so well. I'm doing this really well, but oh, there I messed up. So now I'm no good. And
so what do you tell yourself now in that moment? What do you tell yourself now in that moment?
In that moment, trying to think how I've still, there are those moments that come up where those old thoughts will try to come back and say, oh, look, Ruth, you're no good. Look what you're doing here. But now I say, I think, well, actually, one of the things that I still find myself saying quite a bit is, I am whole, perfect, and complete. And I go back to that. I can't tell you how many times I will say that when there is nothing else. I mean, I do turn to scripture. That is true. If I'm really struggling with things, but I realize that my worth is no longer tied to what I'm doing. I used to really be focused on, and that's where all that perfectionism would come in. I'd say, okay, if I can't do everything perfectly, I'm no good. But now I have been able to shift that thinking, and I realize that if I mess up, it's okay, because I'm going to learn from that, and I found myself saying, I'm glad I made this mistake because I made this mistake and I learned from it. And I have found that to be the case on so many things. I mean, I go back to some of those really difficult moments where those challenging moments where nothing seemed to be going right. I was just doing, and I really wanted to beat myself up, but I'd say, no, what can I learn from this situation? Take a deep breath, acknowledge the emotions if they come, acknowledge those thoughts if they come, but don't stay there. And what can I learn from this? And that has been something that has helped me quite a bit. And then I go back to, I am whole, perfect, and complete. And it's not about what I'm doing, it's about who I am. Good
Very
question,
awesome.
Paula. All right, Paula Cooley, did you want to, I know you probably had another question.
I have another one. Have you ever, or would you want to be in the movies as an extra or as whatever? Have you ever had that opportunity?
Well, that's another interesting question. I would say there was a period of time when I was growing up, I really did want to be, I actually had the dream of going to Broadway. I actually wanted to be in Broadway musicals, and then it didn't work out. And actually was grateful it didn't, because I don't think that kind of life, that's a very hard life. Broadway is tough. Broadway is very, very competitive. But I would have said many years ago, absolutely not. I'd never want to be involved in, I always want to be behind the scenes. And I remember going to one of the When Calls the Heart conventions. And if you guys know who Peter DeLuise is, he's one of the directors that he does a lot with When Calls the Heart and other Hallmark movies. And his wife, Anne-Marie DeLuise, she's also been in some of the movies as well. She actually had a pretty pivotal role in When Calls the Heart. If you guys have ever seen, there's I don't remember what season it is, but it's when the two kids that Lori Loughlin's character is trying to adopt, and that lady comes and tries to take them, and then she finally, so she was kind of like the mean lady trying to come and take the two kids away, and then she finally said, okay, they can stay. That's actually Anne-Marie DeLuise, who is married to Peter DeLuise, and Peter DeLuise is the director. He doesn't usually, sometimes he'll appear in the movies, but he's the director. Anyway, he is quite a flamboyant character. He's loads of fun. And I went during one of these conventions. He was our tour guide for this group. Because you go up and you tour where When Calls the Heart is filmed. And so what he would do is he was bringing people up to reenact, like to reenact certain parts. So he'd give them a scene, and I was literally hiding out in the back. And actually this video is on my YouTube. If you go through my videos, you'll actually see there's a video, because I did post it on my YouTube. So I was literally staying in the back, like because he's asking for volunteers. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want anything whatsoever to do with this. And so I remember I'm standing there in the back, hiding out, and he's looking for volunteers and nobody volunteers. And he picked me, and I was like, really? I don't want to do this. I don't want to be the one up there doing that. So I remember he brings me up, and somebody was filming it for me, and then my first thought is, oh, good grief, now I'm gonna have to share this video with all of my actor friends. Everybody's gonna see this, and I don't want to do this, but I was gonna save face and do it. And I wasn't really that good. I got better, but it was, and I remember I was so nervous while I was doing it, so self-conscious. But then I watch it back, and it's actually kind of a really good memory. I'm glad that I went ahead and did it, and I'm glad that he forced me to do it.
You were a very good cook. You were a very good cook.
So, you guys, it is harder than it looks, because the problem is that my biggest problem was I would look at him at the end of the scene. And you can't do that because I'm so used to doing that. Like, did I do that? Okay. Was that okay? But, so I'm not saying that I absolutely would have, I really don't want to be a lead or anything like that. But if the opportunity ever presents itself that I could be an extra or just come on, I mean, I want to personally, I just want to go to set and hang out, and I don't even have to be on, in something. If they said, you want to come on, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. But a couple of years ago, I would have said absolutely not. Absolutely.
I get your first signed headshot.
Okay. I'm not looking at being a movie actress where that becomes my career. I would actually I do have some ideas to do some script writing, that I would love to write these scripts and make and hopefully sell them to somebody to make the movie. I would love to do that. So we'll see. I have not taken the time to really pursue that too much, but I believe I will. I believe I will at what it just is when it's the right time. And I have a feeling that once I start on those, it won't take me that long because I've been thinking about these ideas. I've planned them out for years, some of these script ideas.
You also mentioned before that you taught art.
Okay.
How long did you teach art? Was it close to where you are now, or where was it when you were teaching? And do you still work with the arts? Do you paint or do you draw, or is it just the singing arts, or just?
That's good. So music was was really what I taught, but what was really weird that happened with art, because there was a weird period of time where I did teach art. I taught elementary art, and what I remember about that is it was a Christian school, and I remember I was on vacation. I was actually like in the middle of Central Texas. We were on vacation, and I get this call from my principal, and she says, well, would you be willing to teach art, elementary art? And I'm like, no, I can't do anything with art. I can't do art. And so I got off the phone with her, and I told my mom, I can't do this. We're having this big family vacation. I can't teach art. My mom's like, sure you could. You've done crafts and stuff, because I've done crafts, but I hadn't really done a lot of drawing or anything like that. In fact, I had teachers when I was growing up. No matter what I did, I was never good enough when it came to drawing, so I just gave up. But I talked to my mom for a while, and she said, call her back and say you can do it. You really should. And I'm like, okay. And so I remember calling my principal back and saying, I don't know much about art, but sure, if you need me to teach art, I'll teach art. And so, of course, being who I am, I then spent the time getting books and researching and seeing how I could do this. And once I got into teaching elementary art, I really enjoyed it. It was so fun how the kids would think I was such a good artist, and I'd be thinking, well, probably, I'm probably not the very best artist, but okay, that's nice. And I really enjoyed it because we did a lot of fun things. We didn't just do drawing, but we would do things like one of the most fun things I ever did in the art class was Michelangelo. If you know the story of Michelangelo, when he was painting the Sistine Chapel, he basically did it lying on his back, and so what I did is I remember having this classroom of first graders, and I said, okay, we've now taped these big pieces of paper underneath the table. So you all are going to get on the floor with your crayons, markers, whatever, and you're going to draw. And we had so much fun. It was so much fun to see these kids, because they were getting the idea of this is what Michelangelo had to do. And that's what I would do, is because of my love for history, I would take an artist from history and we would do some, and I had these books that would help us where, okay, you learn about the artist and then you try to do something that's like what that artist would do. And so so that was the way that I taught art, and I really enjoyed it. Music was the main thing that I taught. And I really enjoyed it. What I will say at this point is it's not something I would go back into the classroom right now. And the reason that I don't see myself going back to the classroom is I don't quite have the passion that I think that teachers really have to have. There's a lot of things when you're teaching the arts, there's a lot of stuff that comes up. It is deceptive. You think it's a really easy thing, that all I did is we just sang all the time. That when I would teach music, that's all we did. And nothing could be further from the truth. And so it requires something that I've seen in other music teachers. In fact, I think one of the biggest eye-opening experiences for me was when Martha was in school. Martha's my daughter, and she had this music teacher who was so filled with passion. And I watched this lady, the way that she would interact with the kids. In fact, I subbed for her when she was on maternity leave. And there was just something about the way this particular teacher, I just saw this passion in her that I didn't quite have. I loved the performance stuff, and we were always doing programs. We were always doing performances. And that was the stuff that I loved. But when it came to actually teaching them, I sometimes didn't have quite the patience and quite the drive that I see in teachers. And actually, when Martha's going to studying art education now, and she took a course her senior year where it was a practicum, where they're actually going into the classroom. When I saw the report back from her first time teaching the kids, I said, Martha, you have what I didn't have. It's like one of those, I can't quite put it into words, but there's something that I believe you have to have this there's something that teachers have to have in order to be in the classroom and really make a difference. And not that I didn't, and I loved teaching. I honestly loved it, and I'm glad that I did it. I learned so much, and I still use so many of those skills. But I got burned out because it just was not what I was supposed to do for my whole life.
I love the idea of laying on the floor painting. I think we need to challenge everybody here to try it.
Oh, it's fun.
My next date night with Frank, we're gonna lie under the dining room table.
There you go. I want to see your drawing. I think it would be great.
It was so much fun. I even got down and did it with the kids, and we really had fun. It's something you really get an appreciation for what Michelangelo did, and it's fun. I mean, it's totally out of the box, and that was just an idea. It wasn't something that I came up with. It was just, because I'm forever, when it comes to coming up with activities, I'm forever looking for ideas, and it was just somebody had that idea, and I took it and I ran with it, and the kids loved it. They actually they didn't want to stop doing it, and it was one of the things that I think a lot of them would remember, to see all these first graders under the table, and then then their teacher comes back and what are they doing? Oh yeah, we're drawing under the table, and it was fun though. We had a blast.
Well, you live out on the farm, and I'm always fascinated when you're doing your outdoor videos. I mean, I'm just fascinated at your goats in the background. Whose idea were goats, and do you milk them? Are they milking goats?
Okay, so the goats, I mean, I know it was possibly my mom's idea, or talking with other people in the area. Originally we had 4 regular sized goats, and I don't remember their names now. My mom might, because she loved those 4 goats. They were very, very special to her. We got the goats originally to keep the grass in the field down, because regular sized goats would, and they did a pretty good job of it. And we didn't milk the ones that we got. We didn't milk them because if you choose to milk goats, you have to keep up with it. Like it's one of those things. You can't just say, well, I'm going to milk the goats this week and I'm not going to milk them next week. It doesn't work like that. I mean, it's a very time consuming thing. So these goats, they were not ever intended for milking.
Okay.
And we learned a lot with those 4 goats. In fact, my mom and I learned one of the goats broke their leg and we could not get a vet out to fix it. So my mom and I had to set the goat's leg, and we did it. We did it. We got all this advice about how to do it. And honestly, you would never have known, a few months later, you never would have known that this goat's leg had ever been broken. I mean, it might have looked a little bit cockeyed, but for the most part, you just wouldn't have noticed. We had to get rid of those 4 goats. We sold them because they started jumping the fence and there was nothing. I mean, we were running into this. It became a danger for them because they jumped the fence, and then there's a street out there, and we don't want them to get hit by a car or anything like that. And so no matter what we did, I mean, I did loads of research to try to figure out how do we maintain these goats and keep them from jumping the fence. And there was just nothing we could do. And so then my mom decided, especially, she's like, well, we want goats, but let's get little ones. And so she did some research, found there were 2 little goats that had just been born, and we were able to go and pick them up. And because they don't really do a lot to keep the grass down, but they're more companions than they're kind of just fun to have. So yeah. I don't know if they necessarily serve a purpose right now, but they're just fun to have. And really it was fun when they were little. Well, they used to crawl under the fence. That was until they got big enough and they couldn't do it anymore. Oh. It was really something. When we had to go and get them fixed so that they would not mate. Man, it was something coming back, because if the brother and sister, and the sister, she was fine, that the brother, all the way back in the car, he's crying like crazy, even though he's not in pain. He's just crying, which like his manhood's been taken, and he's crying. And you could just tell, I'm up in the front with his sister, and she is just like rolling her eyes, almost like, what is my brother doing? He's fine. Like, he's fine. He's making all this. She, like, first of all, she was a little bit concerned, and then she's like, no, he's fine. He's fine. I mean, and the people that we bought the goats from said that would happen, that the male goats, when they get, I don't know, whatever they call it. I don't know if they're called neutered when they're goats. I think they're called something else. I don't remember. But anyway, when that happens, they do make a big deal of it. They make a big spectacle of it because they're not in pain. They just want to, they want everybody to know that this has happened to them. I guess.
Like a kid.
So yeah, so our goats are mainly now just here, that they're just here for fun in many ways.
Pure entertainment.
Yeah.
Pure entertainment. Yeah. The last question for me is I hear your mom talk about, that you live in a little city or town.
Yeah.
Do you fight who has to go in for a quart of milk when you run out? You have to drive to get to.
We only have a 15-minute drive, thankfully.
Oh, okay. Not bad.
Yeah, in town. 15 to 20 minutes. It's not that bad, but still we don't like to have to go in unless we still want to plan it for when we have to go in. So usually if we run out of something like that, we just make do. because we kind of try to plan when we're going into town.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I realize it's only 15 to 20 minutes, but still, if you think about it, if you just imagine 20 minutes into town, give or take, and then maybe you're an hour at the store and then another 20 minutes home, well, then you're looking at, you've been gone like 2 hours, you've been out 2 hours. And so it's not that that's horrible, but it's just, you want to plan ahead just so that we're not having to make trips daily. We would rather not. It's kind of nice to be out here and be kind of self-sufficient and not have to go into town for everything. And I mean, I used to be, of course, when I was subbing, I was going into town every day, but I will admit it's been very nice not to have to go into town every day. And now if we need to go to the city for something, as in, let's say it's a bigger trip, that's more like 35 to 40 minutes. We definitely plan those. But to just go, I mean, yeah, we live in a smaller place, it's true, but it has grown up so much that it has expanded quite a bit, even in the time that we've been here.
Yeah. Well, I thank you very much for letting me, and ladies, for letting me ask the questions.
No, that was great. That was kind of
You
what I
had
was
great
hoping for.
questions. Yeah.
Okay, Veronica, I know you wanted to say something. You wanted to say something or ask a question?
I was trying to come up with a good question to ask you, Ms. Ruth, but my question is, just say if Hollywood wanted to make a movie about your life, who would you want to play you?
Ooh.
Wow.
Oh, Veronica, that is such a good question. Oh my goodness. I don't think I've ever been asked that. I've been asked what network my life story would be on, and I always said Lifetime, because I don't think it's Hallmark friendly, but my life. But to play me, my goodness. Wow. I'm trying to think of who even looks who. I mean, I guess it's not always about who looks like me. I'm trying to think through.
Rachel Cook.
Oh, she would be fun. She would be fun. I was thinking Allison Sweeney would be fun.
Yes, that would be great. That would
But yeah,
be
Rachel Lee
awesome.
Cook. Oh, I love Rachel Lee Cook too.
Yes, and too, yeah.
But no, I was just trying to think of I don't know. It might be might be kind of cool. I wouldn't mind having Candace Cameron play me. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah,
You have nothing else to do, Ruth. You can have a new career. You can play yourself.
That's true. That's true.
Here's a good one.
That would be kind of interesting.
If you could actually in real life be one of the female characters in any of the Hallmark movies you've watched.
Yeah.
And date one of those men in one of those movies and be that character, who would it be? What movie?
I wonder who that would be, eh?
Who would you want to date?
Yeah.
Character, not actor, character.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm actually trying to think through here.
Carson Shepherd?
You know, because the other person I didn't think about was Cindy Busby. I love her too. I'm trying. I think I know who I would probably pick. I think maybe the Unleashing Mr. Darcy series. I'd love to play Elizabeth Bennet. I think that would be fun.
That would be awesome.
Because then who did she get? Ryan Pavey.
No, but this is about the guy. Which guy do you want to date?
Yes.
Which one
do you want to date?
You were.
Which character?
Which character would you have wanted to date?
Carson Shepherd?
No,
like real, like a man that.
No, I wouldn't want
Carson
Shepherd. I'm sorry, guys. Carson Shepherd. His character is so. he's like, oh, well, of course now he's in Baltimore, so it might be different. But in Hope Valley, he didn't get to do very much. He was like always in the infirmary. If we're talking about hey, I say Bill Avery. Bill Avery. Yes.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yes.
I'd be all
Yes.
I could date Bill Avery. I could date Bill Avery. So I don't want to date Jack because Jack's dead. So there's not a point.
Yeah.
There's not a
Well,
but
has there been a movie? Like a movie that you really like the character?
Yeah, there actually is. I would say that still one of my all-time favorite Hallmark movies is Princess for Christmas. That movie, Michael Damian's movie, where I would love. Now that guy has gone to Outlander, and he's the lead in Outlander now. But man, I love the royal movies, and so if we're gonna pick one, it needs to be somebody. I mean, I'm like, give me a guy.
Yeah, why not pick a prince? Come on, if you can date one, pick a prince.
Why not? That's what I'd say. Give me a guy that's got a really great English accent, really nice accent, and I'd be all for that. Definitely.
Well, whoever plays you, they're gonna have to do justice because Ruth, my friend, you are awesome. That's all I can say. Each of you guys are awesome. Seriously.
Oh, thank you, Veronica. I appreciate that. Oh, of course. Now, Andrew Walker's got some pretty good characters. Yes, Paul Green has some good characters too. I realize that. Actually, what was it? I was just watching Campfire Kiss yesterday and remembering, and I had to force myself to turn that off because I was like, oh man, that was such a good. I was watching it like, oh, that was such a good movie. But why didn't they let him sing in that movie? Why didn't he get to sing Written in the Stars? He wrote Written anyway. So I remember.
And he was a little bit arrogant. He was a little bit high on himself in that movie.
Yeah.
Well, but the character was. Yeah, the character was. Yeah. And well, my favorite wedding, he was a little bit arrogant too in that one too.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of characters. I'm waiting for Giles Patton to have his first official Hallmark lead because they haven't let him do an official Hallmark lead. He's actually done a couple leads that people have gotten to see in Canada, but not here. And so we're waiting because he usually plays Giles Patton. You might know him from It Was Always You. He played that's Tyler Hines and Aaron Krakow, and he plays the other guy. He plays the dentist in that one. That's Giles Patton.
Oh, okay.
He's a really good friend of mine. And we're still waiting for that official Hallmark lead. Hasn't quite gotten there. And because he's a pretty amazing guy. He's I've known him longer than I've known Paul. So
I've seen him in a lot of
there's a lot
I've seen him in a lot of movies. I mean, he hasn't got the lead. I hope that he gets. I mean, seriously, the one with Leanne Rimes when he started with, I think was he with Tyler Hines and Leanne Rimes? Is that movie? I love that movie.
Yes, he was in that one also. And that one he had a smaller role. He was a father. He was married and had kids in that one. So there was that one. But yeah. All right. Well, does anybody have any other?
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Have you ever been disappointed when you're interviewing an actor and actress because you associate them with the character and you kind of think their personality should be like that?
Yeah, you know what?
That's a good question.
Now I don't know if I've been disappointed on the positive. I mean, as far as the positive side, I've actually been usually much more like really impressed. But when I first started following all these actors, I used to associate them so much with the character. In fact, that's why I wanted nothing to do with Brennan Elliott when I first saw him because he was playing a really negative character in Cedar Cove.
Mhm.
He was playing Warren Saget, was for sure, but Warren. It was not a nice character, and I remember that I didn't want anything to do with it because I thought, you're just like your character. You must be just like your character, because Warren's mean, so you must be mean. And I didn't want anything to do with him. And I realized that I tended to, and some fans do this, they tend to associate the character so much with that person that they think, well, that person's mean, or that person's this, or that person's that. Yeah, I'm in Cedar Cove too. Yeah, definitely. And so that's something that I learned. I don't think I've ever been disappointed. However, in fact, actually, I've sometimes been pleasantly surprised where I thought this actor was going to be really arrogant or not as nice. I wasn't sure when I first met Jesse Medcalf this summer. I wasn't sure if I wasn't sure how our conversation was going to go. And I was so totally impressed with him that suddenly he moved way up. And I thought, he's a pretty good guy. He's not just a talented, but he's a pretty good guy. And sometimes people don't come across on social media the same way they are in real life. And so it's always important to really get to know the person, not just automatically assume that this is how they are because I saw them in this movie and they're like this. And because not everybody is always like how they appear. So I can't say not everybody's perfect. And sometimes I've been surprised. That's a good question though, a really good question. All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And I have two questions now.
Okay.
Michael Rady's always been I've always really liked Michael Rady.
Yeah.
He comes across as when he's in a movie or something, he has emotions right here on his shoulders. I like to see someone who's acting who looks like they're, I guess, laughing through tears. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
He always has that kind of, and I love to watch him act. Did you interview him? And does he have that same, what was his personality like? I mean, is he come across that way?
Oh yeah. I was so impressed. That was an interview that I landed right when the pandemic happened, and he was getting ready to have a movie with him and Natalie, I can't remember her name. I should know it because I interviewed her too. But there was a movie where they were both they had food trucks. And so yeah, his manager.
You're making me crazy. It's the movie.
Yes, thank you. That's what. Yes. And so I got to talk with him, which really amazed me. And when I talked with him, I was just so thoroughly impressed. I mean, I could not get over. He and Paul have a lot in common because
really,
yeah, Michael. They really have created their own little oasis with him and his family. He doesn't really interact a lot on social media. He kind of stays away from that. But when the pandemic hit, they were fine because they do all their own gardening and they basically everything's forested. They live in their own little oasis. And I love that. And he was just the nicest guy. I mean, just so authentic. I remember at one point, one of his kids interrupted the conversation and he's like, I'm on the phone right now, or, I'm doing an interview right now. And it was just so yeah, exactly. I can verify that what you see from Michael Rady, that's who he is. I mean, he's just fabulous. And I know he doesn't do a lot of interviews, but I was very honored that he was willing to do this interview with me. And because I remember it was one of those times I reached out and did not know what would happen because I'm thinking he's a big time star and there's not really he doesn't have a lot of social media presence, so I don't know. And like his manager or agent or somebody set it up, and I was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, I was hoping to see that he would go to Roma Drama or Christmas Con or something. They never have him there.
Well,
He's
and
one of my favorites.
he probably is. I know sometimes actors don't think about going to those kinds of things. That's not, we so often think that actors are all of them are these super outgoing people and they love to be around people, and most of them prefer keeping to themselves, and they don't really want, they're often very reserved. I mean, they can play all those great characters and they're very creative and all that, but a lot of them are not outgoing. So it's one of they're not all extroverts. We get spoiled because you have people like Paul and people like Tyler who are very who appear, very extroverted and all that, but not all actors. Most actors actually aren't like that, and so some of them, it's really hard for them to think about going to a convention like that. I'm thinking maybe when his kids get a little bit older, because his kids are still rather small. I mean, it's been a few years. Eric maybe is out, didn't do a lot with social media, and as his kids have gotten older, I was very surprised to see him go to a fan convention. It was like, oh, he's at a fan convention, and then he's got another one coming up, and that. So I think that with some of them, it just takes, when it's the right time, and they kind of have to step out of their comfort zone to do it. So you just never know. I think it'd be really cool, because I think that he'd really enjoy. Like Wes Brown is somebody, his first fan convention was in Nashville. Who he was in Nashville when I saw him, because he was at Christmas Con, wasn't he? I believe he was.
He was at both of them.
Yeah, he was. That's what I thought. I was thinking, yeah. Well, who I saw him at Christmas Con, he was so much more comfortable. I saw him at Roma Drama, and at first he was kind of like, you could tell he didn't really know, this is new for him. And so I think a lot of them, it just requires that stepping out of their comfort zone. And once they step out of their comfort zone and try it, they're like, oh, this isn't that bad. This is really cool. Then they start connecting with the fans, and it becomes more comfortable.
Okay. My second question is, I know you've done a lot of interviews and you have a lot of them coming up, and I'm not really sure how you choose who you do, but is there anybody, and I guess there's always someone on the horizon and things are always going forward, but is there anyone right now that you think you would like to do an interview with or a podcast with, and it would just be the icing on a cake for you, that you say, okay, this is, now I've done it.
Yeah.
Is there anyone person like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking with my friend the other day and saying how I have these really big dreams for where this podcast will end up someday. And I told her, I have in my mind that one day, don't know exactly when, but one day in the future, I want to be able to interview A-list actors, not because I have to, not because of how great I am, but it's like, I really want it to expand where I can basically interview anyone that I want to. I mean, that's what my hope would be. And when I was talking along with her, all of a sudden it just like flipped out, and I thought about it later. So somebody who I really would enjoy interviewing would be Hugh Jackman.
Oh,
really,
great interview. I like it.
And the reason is that you think of how, again, it goes back to those musical theater roots that I have. But then he's done all these other things too, and he's always seems like such a really nice guy. I mean, I'd be willing to interview anyone. I mean, when it comes down to it. But for some reason, I just said that it's like I'm talking to him, like, yeah, I'd like to interview Hugh Jackman. I'm like, oh, where did that come from? And it's like I wasn't even thinking about it. And since I said that, I'm like, yeah, I put that on my bucket list. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool to be able to bring him on and not just because he's a quote unquote A-list actor, but because of all the things that he's done. I mean, he's so
Yeah.
talented, does so many things. You know, people have seen him. What I've never seen him. He played like the Wolverine or something like that. I've not seen him in that,
Yeah.
but like his musical stuff, his other stuff, it's like there's always, and then when I see him interviewed, he just always seems like this really nice, humble guy. So that's on my bucket list. But honestly, I'm willing to interview. I think it'd be fun to bring anybody on. I don't know why. I think I was going to say I don't know why I stuck on him, but I think I actually do, just because it's so varied, and it just would be somebody completely different than anyone I've ever interviewed, because I just haven't. The biggest name to this point that I've interviewed would be Candace Cameron. I think she's the biggest name, probably. I mean, I did interview Lacey Chabert as well, but that was, and I interviewed Danica McKellar, but Candace Cameron actually spoke with her, so that was kind of like the other two we did through email, and so those are the biggest names that I've interviewed. But I think it'd be really cool, nice to be able to say, I would like to be able to bring them on and for it to be something very different, you know, and not just the typical Hollywood interview, but something fun. And I think it'd be great for the fans. I think it'd be, you can imagine what the virtual audience would be like if I had somebody like that.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, you guys have been absolutely fantastic. I've loved, and this was my hope. You guys asked some really great questions, and you guys made it lots of fun. That was what I wanted. And the biggest thing that I have learned from doing these podcasts is I used to be very structured when I would do these interviews. I was very structured, and you know, I knew where we were going. I did all my research, and I'm finding now that I'm just like, don't even have much of a plan. I just kind of, I've done a little bit of research, but I really want it to be something that we have such a genuine conversation that it's not all planned out, and it's out of my comfort zone. Yeah, it's fun. And that's really what I want for all of you. I want it to be something fun. That's why I agreed to do this particular episode. I'm not usually the one who's on stage being interviewed, but I love the fact that people came out with wonderful questions, and had such a blast that I do plan to do these quarterly, as long as my schedule allows. Your support has been amazing. This podcast has become something I never would have dreamed, so thank you so much. Please subscribe. Please rate and review me on Apple Podcasts. I'd love that. And I look forward to seeing you all again. Have a great day.